Hello and welcome to Enterprising Minds. We got the whole crew here, so we're doing a bit of a surprise episode. Alex has not told us what we're talking about, so we're just going to see what happens.
All right, dive straight into it. All right, the idea is, what will education look like 15 years from now when your kids are basically at college age? Which is crazily hard to think about. So I broke it down, and we're going to kind of run through a bit of a rubric to kind of help us get to that point. And the idea is to just hit it fresh. We don't have backgrounds in this stuff for marketers. We have some AI background, but that's about it. So we're thinking about the age of AI, what we have right now, and kind of the truths of education, because we know that that will probably remain. The experience, because of the tools and the methods and the buildings and the teachers, that will change, right? So not everything we're going to do is going to be, accurate, and that's okay. This may age like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that has been forgotten in a backpack, but that's what that. So here's kind of the
Or like a Twinkie.
that we're going to kind of play through it, and I'm going to keep it even on my screen to make sure that we remember it. First part is going to be kind of a first principles, jobs to be done piece of what is the purpose of education. And we're going to stay positive method on this. From what little I've read, these things remain true, that teachers want to provide a good experience and they want their kids to succeed. Parents don't want their kids to be idiots. I think that's a universal truth. Kids,
most parents
don't want to be idiots either. They see education as the method to not be an idiot. That's all I'm going as far as that. I mean, I'm not going to go any further on that because I think those remain true throughout time. What that looks like, how that plays out, what that really means to each individual, their incentives, I think that gets really personalized very quickly. But those basic ones are true, that people want this system to work. So we're going to keep that in mind and stay positive for the idea that we're trying to make sure that people get what they want, which is they want the system to succeed.
Right.
So we'll go through the purpose, but then we're going to talk about a utopia version of what kind of would be the best. We will talk about dystopia, but not beforehand. It's too easy to go fantasy dark on AI stuff, and there's too much of that in the news. We're not going to do that. But we will talk a little bit about like how this might not go well, and then mixing that utopia, dystopia, and then base, we'll come up with a reality. So kind of a summary piece. So we're not going to really hit the question answer until we kind of break it down. Oh, first off is, what do you think, or what do you see as the point of education?
The point of education. Now, coming from a family of teachers, obviously I have some bias here. I think it is to prepare you for whatever life inevitably throws at you, right? There's a certain amount of well-rounding that needs to occur, right? It's not enough just to be like the super sciencey kid, right? You also need to understand that, all right, you need to work out too. And vice versa, right? You can't just be the super sporty kid. You also need to know that, painting and dance and music exists as well. Now granted, these are broad brushes and thinking it out loud, but I think that certain amount of well-rounding and providing useful skills is there. Now, how much of that is actually occurring, that's where the real debate is, and that's a totally different podcast. I'm not getting into that.
Not application.
Yep.
No.
Yep. So, I think, off the cuff, without any time to really put together a well thought out response, that's what I would go with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ruthi?
I appreciate you buying me time to come up with my thought out response within 2 minutes. I like that you covered the exposure and an exploration. Like, I think that's a big part of it. So I'm not going to cover that here, but I think that is important. So what I wrote down here is instilling shared practices and ways of thinking that can become habits for life. So when I think about, practices and ways of thinking, these are giving everybody a shared framework, whether it be here's how you read, or here's how you work through a math problem, or here's how you write, even like practices for even just the basics. These are practices thinking that become habits over time, so we cultivate them, and they can serve us later on in life. And early on, that's going to be some of the basics, right? The writing, the reading, some of the arithmetic. Potentially over time, education also expands into things like critical thinking and reasoning and building out the neural pathways for doing this sort of higher level thinking. And I think there is an important piece of everybody having a similar framework so that when we come together in different circumstances, we have sort of a shared structure with which we can work. We're not totally foreign or alien to each other and how we work on a day-to-day.
Mm-hmm. Alex, are you emceeing this, or are you going to jump into?
I'll jump in just kind of at the end, just to kind of throw in my 2 cents before we kind of keep going. I haven't given myself any time to think about any of these questions either, so I'm trying to take this as live as possible. Okay. For me, I'm taking it kind of almost this is kind of interesting because we went very personal and then we kind of went more cultural. I'm thinking about it definitely in a larger kind of education and mass idea as well, of creating an educated populace, of kind of a well-functioning population. And then from the individual's incentive, it's gaining the skills to be seen as competent in whatever you're doing. Which, Dave, I think you hit well also in kind of preparing in the well-rounded aspects, but also like the expose and explore piece too. That's huge. Right. I mean, I wouldn't know about a lot of things if it wasn't for school first giving me an opportunity to be in the library that day and see that book that had that job that I never heard about before and I was fascinated with, right? All those kind of like little moments that you need to look a little deeper, understand a bit more.
Right.
But yeah, I was reading just before this literary and literacy levels of Americans is not great. Pretty poor in adults, actually. So more than 20% of American adults are not literate. And that kills me.
Is that true? Like literate to like at all, or like just to a particular
6th grade level? So there's that. I think level 2 and level 1 is below that, and there's a good chunk that aren't level 1.
Need to update some of my priors.
You know what's interesting about this, and I think like, now granted, this seems kind of left field, at least for me, with the marketing kind of future career kind of AI podcast, right? But I think it is important because, anybody that's going through the various systems will be our future colleagues.
True.
But then, I think about at least the way that the three of us met is because of a very specific skill set around search engine optimization that is not taught. You have to be introduced to it. Right. I would not have the last 15 years of my career if I didn't ask some people some questions on, hey, what are you doing over there? How does that work? And then they showed me. Right. So that's the part that I find fascinating, right? Because there was nothing in the schools that I went to or the degrees that I went into that would have said SEO.
Right. So
nothing. So being open to opportunities and being able to take advantage of those, I think, is going to be really important. But also the thing that I've been struggling with too, just with my own like lived experiences personally, with my son, is making sure that the people have the confidence to go ask a question. Right. Like I had a basketball kid come up to me the other day because, I coach, and it was great. He came up to me. He doesn't really know me. It's a new team. And he's just like, hey, what do you think I could work on? But then as soon as he said that, he started backing away. So I couldn't give him the answer. And I'm like, what are you where are you going?
Shying away. Literally.
I was like, you already did the hard part. You asked. You know. And so that, going and talking to him, and we ended up having a nice thing. But like having that, he knew that he wanted to know, but then getting there was the hard part. Now, granted,
Sure.
he's in elementary school, he has an excuse. But I also know some 20, 30-year-olds who also suffer from that same problem. So I don't know if that helps like reframe it a little bit to be a little more specific, but anecdotally, I think that's at least where I'm coming from. Whereas, how do you have the confidence to navigate the challenges you see in every single day? And then what are the contexts in which you make those decisions, right? And all of that is based on the experiences you're exposed to, and how you've learned to navigate things previously through those exposures, right?
Absolutely true. And that's kind of an interesting thing too, because there is, what does school look like 15 years from now? It's a little different than what does learning look like 15 years from now, right? Because now I'm thinking just refining the question based upon that, because that's a really good point, because there is a lot that is self-education, self-discovery. And if we're going the route that I want us to take, which is speaking of like the value of college in 15 years, stuff like that, that's where I want to gear this conversation towards. I think we're going to have to hit more of a structured education. Like, what is the point of structured education? Maybe is a better question than the one I gave you. Because you were right on with, that is the point of education as a whole. Ruthi, you started taking it more towards that kind of populist, structured framework piece. And it's going to be a mix of both, because to Dave's exact point, I mean, the incentives from the kid learning and self-discovery, that's confidence to ask that question. That is a huge piece of going to school and being a part of that environment where you ask questions, you learn things. It's a safe space to, the purpose is for you to learn, right? Versus a job that might be the purpose is for you to do versus learn. Okay, so let me throw the AI spin onto it. We've seen these tools advance quickly, good and bad. There's always going to be a mix. Different parallels have been tried with AI, which I think they all fall a little short because it's a little different with like the internet. So there's now more information, more connectivity, more ability to share and learn, good and bad. Or a calculator in a math class, which it can give you the answer without you having to go through the hard work, which is good and bad. It allows you to do some pretty advanced math, but it also has its drawbacks with it as well. Also seen it being called like the printing press, where it was hard to get a lot of deep information before, and this is going to help you get information faster and give more people more opportunity to learn things. So variety going on there. If you were designing kind of a utopia experience that is a college level experience, or if you need to take it down a level and say like, I would prefer, this would be the pattern, throwing in that new technology on top of it, does it change things for you? Would you set things up differently? Is it just a hindrance or a barrier? How do you see AI playing a role in that structured environment, that structure of a college level sort of education experience?
Ruthie, I'm going to let you go.
The hard one, Alex.
That was a tough one.
We might have to pause our recording just to give us a little brain.
Well, did we run first? I've got some early thoughts on this that might help. There is a school I know in Texas, and now they've opened a second location as well, that is AI first. And it's at the elementary school level. It's a private school that is trying to design AI tutors and basically education around each individual student. So there's nobody teaching to the average or teaching to the lowest or the highest. Instead, each individual kid does their own program, basically. The teacher is therefore more of a facilitator, and they do have quite a bit of hands-on playtime and other things because actually they're able to get their coursework done very quickly. And the kids currently are scoring in the 99th percentile on basically anything. They're also mainly, it's a private school. It's a wealthy private school. There's a whole lot of bias, kind of built into this. Their parents are mainly engineers, based on the corporations that's been basically sponsoring this kind of stuff. So a lot of bias of, the individuals in the class. So the method is, the results, you got to kind of take with a big grain of salt on that one. I trying to play this through all the way up to college. I think it doesn't change where kids want to succeed. They want to be prepared for the thing that they want to do. They want to also be enabled to be able to go after the thing they want to do. So I think this personalization ends up being a life coach, sort of confidant friend who is more educated, which keeps pushing them kind of along whatever path they're going on. So I could see it as a way that it will help them explore a lot more things, and therefore college would have to be more general or involve lots of different specialized programs that are not necessarily taught always by a human being, but maybe they're proctored by staff. Maybe there's a TA who is staff for multiple classes of, different types. And the AI tool has allowed them to go more toward certification and advancement toward very specialized things, all over the place, much more customized kind of approach that way. So there still is a purpose to the community building. There's still a purpose to the education, the sports, everything. But instead it's a wider open environment where the teacher is not so much focused on the exact, question by question answer. Instead, it's much more guidance.
So I take issue with this.
Please.
Because, well, okay, let's just be honest. People don't want to admit this, but engineers think in a very particular way, and that's a very different way of thinking and designing the kids' futures, which also that's the problem with a lot of modern parents is that they think they can design the kid's future. No, you're a shepherd. You're not a widget maker. Because they're people. How much of what you're doing today aligns with what you wanted to be when you grew up in first grade? Because for me, I wanted to be a robot builder. I thought that was cool. I had no idea what that meant, but man, I saw Star Wars and was like, this would be sweet. And then I realized there's a lot of math, and I'm like, well, that's done. Then I went to be, I'm a baseball star. Why? Because I was super into baseball, and yeah, why not? Go train, go do that, go blah, blah, blah. Then it was basketball. Then it was musician, right? I actually got to do the musician thing. But it was always like it changed as I was exposed to other things. And I guess, you could make the argument now with how much I'm doing with AI. I'm tangentially doing the robot building. But that's a bit of a stretch. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Or maybe it's an outcome thing of you're seeing some of the outcomes that you wanted without having to go through the barriers that were put up before.
Mm-hmm. Well,
or not.
But it's also like, okay, is the schooling stuff specifically for the outcome of getting a job, or is it for you to teach you how to think? Because for me, I've always said that, okay, I graduated in the Great Recession with 2 arts degrees, so nobody was going to hand me anything. So I've had to fight, right? Luckily, that's in my personality. Now, then I went to business school. My arts degrees from undergrad taught me how to think creatively, how to think expansively, how to connect interesting solutions that you wouldn't necessarily connect. The business school MBA taught me how the world worked. Not how it shoulda, woulda, coulda, like a lot of my artist friends got caught up in, but like, this is the low down dirty in the trenches P&L processes, like how decisions get made. Right. So
you needed both.
My career has been a balance of both.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Here's what I have to do. Here's what could happen if we actually got our ducks in a row.
Sure.
Here's the opportunity. Here's what it'll take to get there. Right. That combination of things is something that I kind of naturally fell into because that's where my brain is sort of naturally optimized. That will sound like the fourth level of hell for somebody else. Right?
Sure. No, that's fair. Everybody's got different,
just like for me, I mean, working with some of the really technical sciencey people that I've worked with in my career, we can't meet on that level because they don't understand the creative process. Or they're creative in their own way. Let me frame it that way. It's not necessarily arts, writing, coming up with something out of nothing. It's combining novel solutions, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of take issue with this, like, okay, great. You now have this like life coach to bring you through. Yeah, it'll help. It takes the weight of the decisions off of you because now you feel like you've at least bounced something off of somebody or something else.
I figured.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, you have to be open to the experiences in which you're creating. Right. And I know this is a kind of a simple thing. Like, I mean, all the things that I'm telling, even in third grade basketball, like, if you're just standing around going, here, nobody's passing you the ball. Why? Because you're off to one side away from the ball, not looking like you're ready to make a move or attack the basket, right? You're just standing and waiting for something to happen. And I have to coach those kids all the time. You need to show your teammates by moving around and making space. You need to make your own shot. Right? You have to move around. You have to put the signals out there that you're ready to receive the pass to then do what you do best, which is shoot from 10 feet out. Right? Or you attack the basket. And that's a very minute, kind of metaphor for a lot of the job seeking stuff that we're seeing too, where it's like, if you're just standing around waiting for somebody to look at your application, that just ain't going to happen, especially with all the AI stuff happening now. Right? You need to show yourself available. You need to jump and jive and make sure that, your network knows you're looking and doing all these other things to make yourself available and to make sure that you make your own shots.
So getting back to the question of the day-to-day of college, Sure.
Right.
What then does that look like?
I think college is a safe place to screw up.
So,
right. You screw up with relationships, you screw up in your fields, you show up, you test questions, right? Like, like I thought I wanted to do music education. Hard pass on that 3 months into it. Right. That was a good way for me to go and do that because I went and I sat through what a high school orchestra concert looked like. I'm like, ooh, I'm not doing 30 years of that. Like, no way. So I think it's a safe place to explore the ideas, to explore how you fit into the world, with the different people groups, right? Like if you're living on your own for the first time, man, there's a lot of learning and a lot of mistakes that have to be made for you to learn those things. And I'm saying mistakes broadly. I'm generally thinking of making mistakes as a good thing because that's how you learn ultimately, right?
So college in your kind of 15 years out utopia version is very similar to the way it is today.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. It's not rote job, like do this thing, you become a perfect marketer that can slot into this role. No, I need you to think. I need you to go solve a problem. I need you to go do, I'm hiring you because I need extra capabilities for such and such thing. Right. It has, and you need to have the confidence in your ability and your knowledge of doing the thing, to say yes or no, or, if you're really leveled up, be willing to say, I don't know, and go figure it out.
Okay.
Right.
Ruthie.
All right. I'll step off my soapbox, but that's kind of
You're
where you
giving
triggered me.
fuel for all kinds of new thoughts that I've got. So some of these weren't in my original picture, but we're gonna add them on. So first, I'll just say I don't think that your picture of the school in Texas or wherever else is at odds with Dave's.
No, it sounds similar, actually. Yeah.
I think they work well together. So some of the things that struck me, and that I'm going to put more trends that I think this is sort of utopian leaning. Exactly what the mechanics of it look like, I'm not going to pretend to guess. But that tailored education and this idea of having a tutor that's helping you personally seems like a super valuable thing, right? We all know we learn differently, and there's some of us need examples, some of us like abstract, some of us need the visuals, some of us don't. Like, being able to tailor a student's education toward what they need, and importantly, students learning through the process of pre-K, like pre-K through 12, how it is they need to learn could be a super valuable skill to have, right? I think our current education is so one size fits all. It's almost hard to learn, here's how I need to learn, unless you're getting help from parents.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is a huge piece. Another thing that I think could potentially be really important is reducing the variability of, which could be bad, like there's a dystopian piece we can talk about in a bit, but reducing the variability of getting lucky with a teacher. Like, Dave, everything you described about what you're doing with all your basketball kids is awesome. I suspect most average third grade basketball coaches are not doing that, right? Like, they're not methodical. They're not watching videos. They're not looking up plans of how can I be a better coach. And so if there's another mechanism through which the vast majority of students get better coaching or get better teaching that's not only tailored to them, but potentially ups the overall level, that seems awesome. Like, send us towards that utopia. Then the other thing I was thinking about, this college thing in particular, and this could be true of high school, that's the other thing. Like, maybe we can get through this a bit faster. Like, do we really need that amount of time? Or can you get most of these basic skills to a point where, okay, now college looks different because it's more you're off in the world doing something. I still like that idea of the safe place to screw up, but maybe it just takes a different form. What I like this idea of less school, more learning, more interaction, more exploration. So if having a personalized tutor that's getting you through the basics, getting you through the core curriculum, these types of things, opens up space for more and more people to learn what we've learned, which is, hey, us having conversations like this is actually a really helpful, different way of learning than just talking to an AI, and actually can be more fruitful, both in terms of our own learning, but then also being able to translate that into taking action and sort of working on projects. That could be really excellent. And then I was also thinking, like, okay, if you have these some sort of form of tutoring type, maybe it's not one-on-one, right? Maybe it could be small group. That's a possibility too. So it's not so individualized, because that can be isolating. But it allows you to go deeper, right? If you're super excited about X topic, why not? Go down that rabbit hole, explore, see where it is. And because you get to the learnings faster, maybe there's less stumbling. You don't have to go through 2 arts degrees and an MBA to figure out, okay, I'm going to actually lean in here. Or in my case, I was all about finance. I'm going to do finance. Oh, P.S. until I went to my first internship, and I went, oh, this isn't really what I'm into. Wouldn't it have been nice if sometime earlier, perhaps like I could have learned that much easier, and that would have saved me perhaps a lot of time, and I could have spent more time doing something that was interesting to me and that was more productive. So those are some of the things that I was thinking about, like if we could trend towards that of being able to go deeper where we care, having tailored type education, but then also can we spend more of our time doing this type of interaction that we're doing, where you're discussing ideas, you're bouncing off ways of thinking, you're working on projects. That seems like something that could really, in a good way, change the way we do education.
Yeah, I did want
Honestly, anything that would be more of the Socratic method, I think makes sense, right? You get into the room, you pose a question, you debate it, because then you actually have to wrestle with it. It's not just write a paper, show me you read the book. Who cares? I got ChatGPT for that. I don't need that. I got Notebook LM for that. Cool. Do I remember half of the stuff that I put in? No, definitely not. But the stuff that I've actually listened to or I've actually, digested and thought about, then that's the stuff that I actually remember. And the thing that I appreciate about this setup, right, with you guys, I will come out of left field with some idea, and I love the fact that, one or both of you will be like, okay, what? But for me, it seemed like the natural thing that everybody would think that way. It's like, no, you're a jerk.
This is exactly where I wanted a major point I wanted us to hit on, which was humanities' place in education. Because we've all had terrible teachers and we've all had great teachers. And I've had a couple of bad teachers that turned me off from areas that I thought I was going to continue in. And I learned so little that I felt like I couldn't do the next level of the class even. And I would have to repeat an entire semester, which quite frankly was just not realistic. So it dropped me out of that. I also had some great teachers who gave me skills that I use today that are still above and beyond others. And it's because of those experiences that I had that were difficult and challenging, and all the random, practices that they came up with that made a difference. Honestly, it made a huge difference. So this is my next piece of, could you have the best experience in a VR environment or a virtual environment or pre-recorded or live or interactive environment? Or does a human being need to be there? Because now you could take the best of the best teachers together and cut all the worst of the worst teachers. Is that better or is that worse? And I love the idea of the Socratic method live, because there is a huge piece of plagiarism and the issues that I think colleges are facing today that gets very nicely solved, actually, by finding a way to do education via that method. But standardized testing, there's a whole lot there too. But so let's go back to humanities' place versus a tool's place in education.
So I'm going to circle back on the good teachers or the bad teachers, and I'm going to go back with the anecdotes, because that's what I'm good at. I will show my one and only tattoo is related to bad teachers. That's why I'm showing it.
Wow.
Because when I was in music school, I had already been down to Nashville. I've recorded my own record. I've already pressed a number of them, went and figured out how to sell them in the record stores and the head shops and anywhere else that would take independent music. I had booked all my own gigs. I'd done all that. I knew what it was like, right? And, my girlfriend at the time, now wife, she was working at Warner Brother Records. So, like, I had a bunch of teachers who were then like, this is the way the music industry works. I'm like, no, which you can imagine made them a big fan of mine. But the flip side of it was I had one teacher who was a complete jerk, and he eventually, like, at the time, I had long hair, I looked like a Viking. I mean, it was the total like rock star look. and I was in his class or in his office because I had to do a makeup test. And he said offhand, well, you can always drop out and being an ignorant rocker. I said, excuse me? I will wait for an apology. And until then, I will not be coming to class, and you will not fail me because I'm going to go report you to the office right now. It also helped that I was on the students with disabilities list for insomnia. As you can imagine, a rock star lifestyle is not conducive to 8 a.m. Classes. But that teacher in particular, plus the other music comp teachers in that particular space, they tried banning me from the student recitals, but you needed student recitals in order to graduate. But because I had a network of classmates and performers who liked the way that I wrote, who liked hanging out, they would say, hey, so-and-so gave me this composition. It's this name, and it was under a pen name. So that then when they would play the piece and people started clapping, they would point at me and piss off all the professors. Right? But I got the credits I needed, and I had to work against the system, and it sucked. It was really hard because, it was teachers are supposed to help you, right? That was my undergrad experience. So not awesome. But then when I went into the MBA, I got a phone call from a guy who was the dean of a very particular program. Said, hey, I saw that you applied for this one. Have you ever thought of this? I said, no, that sounds interesting. Here's what I'm into. And he's like, yeah, you're more of a perfect fit. So then he got me in. I'm like, all right, great. So then he ended up becoming one of my professors, and he knew I was transitioning from being a full-time musician into more of the normal life of marketing and business. And he came in one day and he said, I signed you up for Public Relations Society of America. You're on the membership committee. The first meeting is tomorrow at 7 a.m. at this Caribou in Minneapolis. And I just went, what? But I fully recognize he went out on a limb for me. So at the time, I was going to bed at 4 a.m, man. I was not,
No, 7 a.m.
not on normal hours. So I made sure I stayed awake, and I was awake until 10 a.m. that day, and then went to bed. Because, if you're going to go out on a limb for me and like really force my hand, then yeah, I'm going to show up. I'm not going to make you a liar. Right. Being a man of my word is very, very important to me. So I made sure that I backed that up. But, that good and bad piece has really defined my journey. More so than some other people. Like, I wish I could say I've had more than 4 teachers that have really done amazing things and pushed things, but no, it's just not been my experience.
So I think that gets at a fair bit of the human element in the different dynamics, specifically the teachers. And it's not obvious how that evolves. I like this idea of teacher as a facilitator, or I'm not sure the exact words to characterize the professor you had in your postgrad, who's almost like teacher as support, or like giving you the hand up and saying, hey, I see your potential. Let's help you. Let's tap into it and help you reach that potential. Versus, I think one of the things I hear and take away from your undergrad experience is teacher as manager of lots of students. It's more like they're having to deal with a large student body, and any student that makes it a little bit difficult or is like a thorn in their side, is a real problem, because they're having to it's a volume based deal.
Yeah. Education at scale.
Education at scale. Yes, that's a good way of putting it. And so, there's probably a full dimension here about AI as resource for teachers, helping them think through in better ways. Hey, this student is taking a different approach. How can I reframe? How can I help this student in the same way we do with our own children, right? When my 5-year-old is just driving me up the wall, it's hard to just take a moment to go, okay, yeah, but I will because I care a lot, right? And
Sure.
so it's like, how can I reframe this? So maybe there's a piece here about AI as being a tool for teachers to make better connections and to rethink their connections, because I'm sure it doesn't feel great for those teachers either. Like, that's not why they got into this business, to manage and corral students at scale. Like, I suspect maybe some of them get kicks out of it, but I suspect that's the minority. But I also want to think about, Alex, your question about, like, where's the human element? I think, Dave, you mentioning the Socratic method, like that hits it on the head. It's like there is an important element for individual learning, right? That's why we read books. That's why we spend time sort of thinking deeply with a topic, be it reading, maybe sometimes it's listening to podcasts. I think writing is always going to be an important part. Like, I think writing needs to be there no matter what. Learning how to write is in a way learning how to think. So I think there's an element there, but that's all individualized learning. And I think AI can play a really powerful role in amplifying that, but then also then making space for where do we come together to learn and what does that look like? And I think facilitation is a lacking skill. Like, that's something perhaps will need to be built up. If you're going to go to school to learn to be a teacher, perhaps that's a skill set that all of a sudden gets boosted 10 points. And now we got to spend a lot more of the curriculum on how do we facilitate conversations? How do we facilitate learning and discussion in a classroom? Because it's not an easy thing. And that's where the shift of the focus goes.
Let me throw a little spin out here.
Yeah.
Dave and I both actually had a similar experience in that, nothing in our education, or I think maybe it's true for you as well, hit our career, right? But it wasn't like SEO didn't exist at the time of our graduation. It was that the books were outdated and the professors had an experience from maybe 15 or 20 years ago, or actually maybe no experience at all. And they're just teaching via the textbook, basically. I mean, literally, I graduated straight into a digital marketing career, and there was one chapter of one class that covered digital marketing. That was it. Literally, 10, 12 pages. And that was it for my entire 4 years. And that was my immediate first job outside of college, was straight into that field. So clearly already a full-time field. Clearly there's already need for it. But the methods that were being used were dated, definitely. If you had an AI-based education program or textbook or whatever it is, however you're kind of crafting this, semester, that information would always be up to date, but it also would be very quickly beyond the experience of the professor. Like in a faster moving field or in a different moving field, Dave, you mentioned music. Music industry definitely changes quickly, and it definitely has changed a lot in the last 10 years. Marketing changed a lot in the last 10 years. I've been a lot of careers actually have. So a professor who gets tenure is out of date. How do these AI tools, do they help keep things up to date? Does this become a hindrance? Is there a way to kind of integrate this and kind of get this to work within the system? How does this kind of play out?
What's interesting for me too is that with the guest lecturing that I've been doing over the last couple of years, I've experienced how different colleges have different personalities.
Yeah.
And that was something I didn't necessarily appreciate until I'd been doing a lot of speaking at one institution in the Twin Cities, and then I got invited to an event held by the competing, institution in the Twin Cities. And one of them is much more research focused.
Yep.
And that was immediately apparent. Now, granted, I'm very sensitive to the way in which people communicate. So I immediately picked up on the fact that every single professor started every sentence with, well, you'll remember in this study. Is that, well, no, because I didn't read that one.
Your pre-reads are mile high.
Right. Whereas, the other institution is much more of a like, hey, how do you get this done? Like, what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
Okay, based on what you're trying to do, here are the frameworks from these thought leaders that are going to work for you.
Sure.
Or you should go check out to then go apply it. Between those two institutions, I know which one I prefer. Because it's just like, oh my God, if I have to spend more time citing things and like formatting things into a template, like, I mean, it was already bad when I was a student, but like now as an adult, it's 20,000 times worse. Like, don't make me fill out a template in anything. And yeah,
I want to circle back to
anyway.
something that Alex, or a thought that came up as you were talking, Alex, which is I realize I have maybe a different underlying assumption or way of thinking about college, which is I went to a liberal arts college, and finance was, I think, the only, like, it was one of the few degrees where you were learning the technical skills you might apply to your job. Unless you were going to be an art historian, unless you were going to go into the State Department, and then right. So I also studied political science, and what you're describing here is like with your comment about like there was one chapter that discussed SEO or digital marketing, and maybe SEO was mentioned in a paragraph, maybe, right?
Yeah.
But like that assumes that you're going to college to learn a specific set of skills. So there's like the liberal arts piece and there's the technical piece. And I have a pretty strong bias that says, I think an important part of our education probably should be more on the liberal arts side, like learning how to think, learning how to grapple with different ideas, learning how to have conversations like the ones we're having.
Okay.
Even maybe going so far as to say, hey, let's do the great books. Like, let's really grapple with those big ideas because we're learning how to learn, as one of you mentioned earlier in the podcast. And the cool thing about AI is that it can allow you to quickly learn the technical skills that now you don't have to spend time in a classroom learning. Because to your point, it's always going to be a few steps behind where industry is. So why wouldn't you just go learn on the job with AI as your sort of self-educating assistant? And maybe that's my bias of where college in the future goes, is it can focus much more on let's learn how to think and let's grapple with the big human ideas, and then we can focus on the technical things on the job.
I think that plays out. I was trying to think of that of like, okay, put that against, I always think of math classes of just being very standardized. English and writing and kind of literacy aspect of education can vary a lot. There's a lot of different practices and methods. But math is a little bit more structured in like you're learning algebra, pre-calc, geometry, whatever it is, trig, whatever you cover.
Yeah.
And those ones are frameworks, thinking about it a little deeper. Like it's beyond the calculator thing. It is, because you show that you know the framework by doing the problems and answering them and getting the right answer and showing the work and whatever it is, that gets you that piece. But it's a framework that they're trying to teach you each time. And even though it can be very literal, and to me, it just like smacked of like being very technical, like you speak of the technical skills. I was like, okay, math is like a very technical skill kind of thing.
Doesn't have to be.
But yeah, it actually it's always
like a statistical way of thinking, how to think about data and numbers.
Sure.
Right? That doesn't have to be on the job. That's like a framework, just like economics. How do you have an economic way of thinking?
Yeah, I was thinking geometry too, of like, here's a physical object. How do you split it up so that you can determine whatever you're trying to figure out about it? You don't look at it as a whole and be like, oh, I know a formula for every cube out there. You're like, no, I can measure one face and I can keep on moving. Like, there's a framework that got built in, which allows you to deal with whatever situation that appears, which also plays out in terms of every job is a little different. It's not like you're going to learn, and the job changes constantly. So it's not like if you learn the entry level job of today for this particular company, it's perfectly applicable for a different company or even the same company 3 years from now. Like all those things vary a lot. So the framework methodology makes more sense, which is kind of the core of education anyways. Maybe I'm just kind of realizing this out loud.
Well, I think, but it's also like even in your chosen field, right? I mean, the number of times where I have made the assumption that the person I'm speaking with will have the context to understand, like, okay, and granted, I'm gonna sound like the professors that I was just making fun of. If you'll remember Porter's Five Forces or the Innovator's Dilemma,
Sure.
we're living that out real time, and then be like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "You don't remember the hit from 1975?" Like,
Michael Porter, he's not on your list?
Did MBA, you don't.
yeah, but so it's just like, okay, there are ways of applying stuff, but again, like, I mean, we've said this on I have said this on multiple podcasts, that I'm really struggling with a lot of coworkers post AI where they are so caught up in data and de-risking decision making because that's the way that they were brought up, that they end up inadvertently micromanaging. So like, now granted, this is a personal thing, maybe more of a personal psychological thing, but I was getting so frustrated with the level of detail that the higher ups wanted that I finally just summarized in a title slide that I had to talk to him. Can we hit the 5% target? Yeah. Why? Because you said to. And then I moved on to the next slide because I'm like, there's literally no time for me to look at all of the nitty gritty, nor does my brain work that way. But am I confident that I can hit your arbitrary number? Yes, I am. And I will beat that number. Why? Because that's who I am. But that is me knowing me, right? That 7th level of hell for that other person of, oh my God, you would actually say that to your boss? Yeah. Because then he's not surprised later. Like, but also see crappy experiences with professors. Like, I'm done with people who think they're important because they think they're important. Yeah, anyway, I'll shut up before I'm in trouble.
I mean, there's probably a good summary point that we can hit actually right now in terms of we discussed that basically education is a lot about exploration. It's a lot about frameworks and it's a lot about community. So there's a lot of human connection points that are necessary as a part of that. I think we didn't really hit it, but there's also a piece of physical development and maturity as well. So while that one school does, all their learning in an hour or 2 hours of the day, and the rest of it is, this other experiential kind of time. It's funny. There's a Star Trek episode that has some like kids in it, and they're like, "Oh, you don't know theoretical physics by age 10? Like, my gosh, what kind of rock did you grow up on?" Kind of a comment, and it was like massively accelerated education, right? And maybe it's possible to have a very accelerated education, but there's also those experiences are a huge part of your education in terms of how you work with other people and humanity in general. So you can't leave that alone in an AI world. You have to set instead, like maybe AI is that teacher's helper in terms of understanding the personalities of the individuals in the room, or making sure, hey, you got a few loud voices during your Socratic method kind of question answer debate. How do you get them engaged? By pulling up the full class, trying to get everybody to speak, or how do you show that a topic well enough to be able to discuss it, debate it, write it live, however it is that you prove that you understand those frameworks without memorizing, the 5 P's of whatever, or the 5 A's of whatever thing, which there's always some number.
That's just a way to get more consulting dollars into your company. I mean, that's really what that boils down to.
Man, that's our fun, annoying background. I mean, like, everybody's repeated it, and it was like, it's a terrible imagery, but everyone's using it. And yeah, they're using it to sell. I was just like, these are terrible methods. What do you know actually what's behind this? Wow.
But I think going back to your comment about, potentially accelerating learning in some areas, but then also allowing for more space for something like the Socratic method or discussion or interaction, right? Whatever that form it takes. I think it ties back nicely to a point Dave, you made at the very beginning about instilling confidence, right? It's equipping students with the skills they need to be successful, but also the confidence to be able to effectively use that. And I think that's an area where there are a lot of gains to be made in our current education system. And so if that's one of the opportunities that AI can help us take advantage of, that seems like a huge win.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for making it this far into this episode. This is rather fun, the exploratory. Obviously we don't have the answers. It's fun to think about. Let us know what you think about this.
Please do.
Hit us up on socials, Enterprising Minds, Substack for the Pathways newsletter. There's opportunities to interact with us there. And enterprisingminds.com for anything else you would need from us. So go check out those things. In the meantime, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks on the next episode. Take care.
Cheers.